Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today I wanted to look at something that's been on my mind for a while, but I thought this would be particularly special for the Succession fans on my channel. We've all obviously gotten to know the Roys very well through the peeks into their lives that the world of Succession gives us. But what I'm interested in more and more every time I rewatch the show is what the Roys truly look like to an outsider. How would we, as normal people, react to the Roys without any of the privileged information that we get through intimate moments in the show? And this would be interesting in general, but of course the Roys are the heads of one of the largest media conglomerates in their world, and so we get a really holistic view of their public image, both curated by Waystar and not. So today I thought I would go through the entirety of the show and put together any mention of the public, their response to things, any articles, news headlines, news clips, ads, interviews, social media, as well as anything that we hear Waystar, the company, is doing. Shows, movies, events. The whole point of this is to paint a picture of the Roys that we as normal people would get in their world, without the access we have to them from the show. But what would our opinions be of them if we had never gotten that? And what slips through the cracks? So of course, let's start with season 1. In the pilot, we hear Waystar's haphazard slogan, "Feel it," at Greg's management training, and see the infamous cover of the Forbes magazine. Kendall's on, the air with the flare.
You know, this has been floated already. There's fucking paps outside. I'm getting asked for quotes.
We also see for the first time members of the Roy family giving the press quotes semi-anonymously.
That's what I'm hearing from people close to the family. Those disloyal fucks.
And the news of Logan's aneurysm releases very quickly. So once Logan's in the hospital, Roman and Shiv talk about ramblings from social media. We get that meme of Logan, and Lawrence pettily releases the "shit show at the Fuck Factory" article from Walter, which also uses that picture of Kendall from the Air with the Flare article. By the end of the episode, Kendall and Roman are announced as interim CEO and COO. Some of the most interesting stuff we get in episode 3 is right at the start, looking throughout Logan's office, and some really chintzy headlines from, I'm assuming, older Waystar publications. One of Kendall's quotes is misrepresented in the press after a meeting.
Lifeboats, not iceberg. Jesus, Carolina.
That's what we're pushing.
We also obviously hear in this episode that Waystar's stock has gone below 130, which obviously implies how the public feels about someone like Kendall or Roman at the helm of this organization.
That's how much people don't like me.
And the news gets out pretty quickly about Stewie becoming part of the Waystar crew because Rava mentions it to Kendall at dinner.
So is this the Stewie money we're celebrating? Because I saw the news.
In Sad Sack Wasp Trap, we see a really quick snippet of the ATN Wall Street breakdown. Hear Tom talk about how important the Reckney balls were in Vanity Fair magazines.
Growing up, I used to look at the pictures of the Reckney in Mom's Vanity Fairs.
Carolina gives Logan a rundown of a bunch of articles, which include pieces on Logan's health.
Kendall Roy will give the traditional address at the Reckney Charity Ball tonight in a sign that even after recovery from his stroke, Logan Roy is intending to wind down from public duties.
And aside from like the Reckney ball itself, you know, paparazzi, stuff like that, this is the episode where we get all the stuff about the senator's husband's butthole and ATN wondering what to talk about with the butthole, and Shiv coming to yell at the chick from Scrubs about the butthole.
You had a 10-minute sexpert segment on how to keep your man happy in bed on a news channel.
Barely anything in the next couple of episodes. We hear about the Turkey movie that Roman's really pissed off was released and that his girlfriend likes. And of course, in episode 6, the failed coup takes place. Whereas we get a lot of stuff in Austerlitz. Obviously, Logan is hit with the piss, and so we get some news about that. The awesome New York Mag cover, the crack up, and, you know, Stewie's response to it.
And I'm reading this over my morning cappuccino. It says your family is a horror show and it's destroying America. People say that he's a coked up Dauphin that doesn't know shit from Shinola, and that the two of you aren't even talking to each other, which I'm getting a vibe of.
We see a campaign ad for Gil, and of course this episode is about the family therapy at Connor's house, and so that whole debacle starts with a conversation with Carolina relating to last episode. When Kendall's on the phone with Rava, she references that shitty article.
Kendall Roy ran the streets of New York, sweaty and been incoherent, ranting about a coup against his father, but couldn't find his way to the boardroom to start said coup. Is he back on drugs? We couldn't possibly say, but some people are saying that.
Which is something we learn about more by the end of the episode. Logan was the one that was sending all of these stories about Kendall being on drugs out.
I like those stories you planted about me. That was...
Although we don't actually get to see the article, we see the little photo op that Roman and Logan do together. And not a lot throughout the rest of the season. Gil on ATN getting grilled about his wife's suicide. Kendall has Frank write up stories about the art girls that he failed to make a deal with. The news about the bear hug gets out because of Frank.
We've been contacted by a reporter, and they know something's cooking.
Reporters take pictures of Shiv's wedding procession, and of course, there's the failed satellite launch. So now that we've gone through season 1, I thought it would be a good time to step back and talk through some of the ways that Succession satirizes or parodies real-world figures. And, you know, the Roy family is heavily inspired by the Murdochs. Waystar Royco, to me, feels like a conglomeration of Fox and Disney. Lawrence Yee and Walter are such a direct parody of Vice that they even wrote an article about it when the show was coming out. Gil is our Bernie Sanders figure. I think the Raisin, the president we hear about throughout the show, and Mencken, who we see later, are an interesting mix of Trump in different ways. The Raisin seems to be much more old school conservative, and Mencken skewing much more radical. On a similar note, Ravenhead, the anchor from ATN, he's a little Tucker Carlson, a little Alex Jones, a little Ben Shapiro. We do get a number of references to legitimate publications, The New Yorker, New York Magazine, The Times, The Globe, and the only real fictional organizations we have in the journalism world are Waystar and Pierce. And so I think just being able to immediately equate these figures helps to give us a better idea of how the average population feels about them based on our own feelings on these real-world figures. Once we start season 2, the bear hug is public, and so is the fact that Kendall backed out of it. And of course we get the iconic "I saw their plan, Dad's plan was better" interview.
To me, he looks like a fucking joke, but what would an average Joe think?
Roman cracks some jokes at a press conference about the satellite disaster, and we learn from Colin that the waiter that Kendall killed last season, Andrew Dodds, his death was ruled death by misadventure. In Walter, we obviously get a number of facetious headlines. We also see Stewie on this show that's kind of like fake hardball, talking about the deal. And of course, by the end, we see a lot of Walter's staff members recording Kendall either telling them not to unionize or shutting down Walter. He even says, "Post your little videos" at one point, which implies that while a lot of speeches or meetings that we see throughout the show, the public is not privy to, Kendall's behavior around Walter was. Then we start hearing about the biography that Michelle Pansel is supposedly writing about Logan. Quotes that Greg gives.
Well, he can be scary, vindictive, paranoid, and violent.
And hear the fact at the end of this episode that Mo Lester was another person that ended up talking to the biographer. The news around the potential Pierce acquisition leaks because of Roman, and we get a number of things from the Shiv side quest of this episode. Connor's presidential rant in the kitchen, and her meeting with the much more commoner actor in Willa's play.
Now, these days, actually, the real news comes from comedians.
So the next couple of episodes, we get a ton of stuff. Shiv and Tom talk about Ravenhead's reputation.
He's one of our most popular anchors.
You've seen the video, Tom. He's right there with the fascists.
And his demo skews younger.
Roman's management training shows Waystar's outward appearance. There's a PGN segment about Ravenhead with a picture of him at a Nazi meetup. After the shooting, ATN anchors respond to the alarm, and we get some news segments from them about the situation throughout the episode. There's a split second of PGN on in the safe room as well.
Rhea, it's okay if we go back to ATN.
And of course, this episode we get
Connor Roy was interested in politics at a very young age.
We hear about the general reputation of PGM.
PGN is getting outflanked left and right. The whole edifice is crumbling.
Naomi's speech about the tabloids Waystar wrote about her suicide attempt.
You people, you're your fucking tabloids all the time, pushing and selling it until I put a cherry on top and wrapped my fucking Audi around a highway divider.
And of course, one of my favorite moments in the entire show, Nan talking about the fucking Berlin Wall.
Call me a romantic, but I happen to believe that the presence of Pierce news cameras was what stopped certain East German border guards from opening fire in 1989.
Then in our Jestys, we get some paparazzi, the whole "we here for you" thing. And of course, this is where the New York Mag cruise article comes out. We get that headline, we hear details of the article.
They found a woman, Kieran. She was working the cruises back in the mid-90s. Name checks Lester McClintock.
She says Uncle Mo asked for sex with her and the other dancers to get their contracts renewed.
Sexual exploitation.
Yeah, she's saying that she was one of the only ones who refused to sign an NDA and that we derailed her career as a result.
The old Houston story, the woman that jumped and drowned. What if something happened to her?
Stories of dozens of other women who actually signed the NDAs.
Spooky words, data wipes, NDAs, shadow logs, hiding cruise malpractice.
And obviously the public perception of the Roys really shifts at this event.
How's your dad? The rumor mill is saying practically dead.
I hear you're in trouble.
Ahoy there! Permission to never fucking board?
And nearing the end of the episode, we get the panel with the Roy siblings that includes a response to the article.
I mean, I think the thing for us is we don't want to simply condemn and move on.
And sometimes it feels like, my God, it's everywhere.
But we'll do whatever it takes, we'll do whatever anyone wants.
I think I'm a little more aggressive. Sometimes I think you just need a good old-fashioned dinosaur call.
In the British episodes, there's a Maysbury Capital shareholder ad. Jerry discusses public rumors about Roman as Oppo research.
There's rumors of a face tattoo situation. Did you get jerked off by your personal trainer at the end of session?
And then we get a bunch more stuff about the waiter, Andrew Dodds. There's an article from The Post called Bullied to Death about him, which says Logan punched him. And obviously this is Sandy's tabloid.
Yes, they're saying you punched him, which caused him in effect to drive his car into the river.
Which causes him to go and meet Andrew Dodds' family. And I think this is a good time to take a quick digression to something I think is really interesting surrounding this, and it's noting the accuracy around the scandals in their lives. Someone like Andrew Dodds, who was ultimately killed because of Kendall's drug problem, as seen as this martyr of Logan Roy fronted workplace harassment, which ends up becoming an interesting conversation and one that Logan has to go and tamp down, but is one that's genuinely so unrelated to the incident itself. And so I think it's interesting to also think about plot lines that are important to the common man, but that aren't as important to the audience, and things the other way around. I don't think I ever really cared about the president, the raisin, very often before doing this rewatch. But of course, if I lived in this world, any news about him, particularly this, ATN funneled news about his worsening Alzheimer's, would be something that was of concern to me in a way that doesn't really matter when I'm just here for the Roy family. And on the flip side, I think the average person wouldn't care nearly as much about Shiv and Tom's marriage or Roman's sexual difficulties, Kendall's lack of parenting, Logan's affairs. But that is true too of a variety of things that we see in the more, professional business encounters with the family that end up taking on a different context because of how well we know them. Like the vote of no confidence. If I were to, only read the article that Rava read, I would probably agree with whoever wrote that, thinking that this is a last-ditched effort made by this drugged-up king-to-be, rather than at least a semi-legitimate business decision by a group of Logan's peers. That's true, too, of our Jestys. Watching that panel, I would find their responses kind of smarmy and gauche in a way that I don't after seeing how much more rebellious they really are based on, what Hugo and Carolina were telling them to do. And we'll discuss it a little more as we go, but this sort of thing in terms of accuracy and public position relates pretty heavily to Connor's presidential campaign, just how important Connor's stupidity is in making the Roy family look dumb, and based on how immature and out of touch his behavior is. Back in the car, Logan talks about his viewership.
You know, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Our stuff. Give them a bit of a laugh, some decent TV to watch, news that doesn't talk down to them. Good fucking people, nice fucking folk.
In episode 8, Willa's play comes out. A plaque is added outside of Logan's childhood home, complete with a single protester with a sign that says Roy cunt. Logan also gets a shareholder robocall, but then we get a tour of the Helen Roy School of Journalism and Logan's party, where Rhea is publicly announced as his CEO successor, and they unveil his plaque. DC gives us a 60 Minutes episode with the whistleblower.
Millions and millions of dollars paid out over decades to cover up sexual exploitation and harassment by Bright Star employees. And a lot of it actually committed by the man in charge, Lester McClintock. Guests overboard injury and unexplained deaths.
In RPI.
Yeah, that's incident, no real person involved. That means it's a sex worker or a migrant worker at a foreign port, not involving a guest or a permanent member of staff.
No real person involved.
And a ton of hearings, which starts with Tom and Jerry. And so we get a lot of miscellaneous C-SPAN footage throughout the next couple of episodes. And of course, Tom really shits the bed here.
Says the person whose husband was just called a smirking block of domestic feta.
We also hear about con heads for the first time.
Keep fighting the good fight. You got a lot of con heads out here pulling for you.
Then we get Logan and Kendall on the stand.
When I read of the abuses of power alleged in my cruise division, that was the worst day of my life.
This is the most humble day of my life.
Senator, in this country, all news from the Times to the supermarket tabloid is for profit. We don't have a state media. As I'm sure you know, you'd have to go to China or Russia for that.
Snap on Gil.
We got that, Carolina?
Which brings us an ATN news segment, The Takedown.
Kendall Roy serves self-satisfied hypocrites on the Senate Commerce Committee a healthy portion of reality pie today.
And we also get one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the entire show, Shiv talking to the woman that's supposed to be going on the stand against cruises. And of course, Bill comes up to Logan and implies he'll write a tell-all book one day. And of course, we don't actually hear anything about this salacious memoir or about the biography that Pansel was working on, but we can assume, especially after Logan's death, that they did come out. And to close out the season, immediately Greg is on the stand.
If it is to be said, so it is.
Willa gets a lot of bad play reviews.
Just ignore the headline, okay? Disregard that because...
Whereas Connor is happy that he's a meme.
One of the conheads sent it in. I'm a meme.
You're a meme?
Yeah, I got memed.
And we get the earth-shattering press conference where Kendall rejects his allegiance to Logan.
The truth is that my father is a malignant presence, a bully and a liar. My father keeps a watchful eye over every inch of his whole empire. And the notion that he would have allowed millions of dollars in settlements and compensation to be paid without his explicit approval is utterly fanciful. But I think this is the day his reign ends.
And of course, we get the awesome change in frame rate of that shot of Kendall as well. So season 3 starts basically immediately after the end of season 2, with Kendall, Greg, and Carolina swamped by reporters, and Kendall forces Carolina out. And later, Logan watches a news report about him, and they read an article about Carolina. This is also the season where we get a lot of Greg social media notes.
You're the #1 trending topic, ahead of tater tots.
We hear just a snippet more about Willa's bad play reviews.
Kill yourself if you got a ticket, or the one about brain poison.
Carl and Frank also discuss some of the insane things that they've apparently cleaned up for Logan before.
There were the tabloid suicides, when we nearly went kablooey because of Argentina, Tiananmen accommodations, the black cloud after Sally Ann.
We really get in the second episode is a quote from Kendall about Shiv.
You're still seen as a token woman, wonk, woke snowflake.
Jerry makes sure to take a little picture of her name scrolling across on the ticker when she becomes the interim CEO. The episode with the largest quantity of public media is probably the disruption. The first scene we get is someone writing a piece on Kendall.
You're quite concerned with how you're going to come across. One question that people do have is about your siblings. So where are they in this? Have you managed to stay close with them?
Good tweet, bad tweet.
Allies don't always come in the form we like, but what Kendall Roy did was important and brave.
He clearly has mental health issues and crazy guilt coupled with addiction. That's all this is, and it's sad.
Fuck the patriarchy!
And all of the stuff with Sophia Woby, obviously Ziwe playing a kind of dumbed down late night version of herself, who Kendall is immediately masochistically obsessed with.
This is the guy who told Congress like a month ago that the investigation into his father was a witch hunt.
And so we see him watch Awobi over and over again. There are a couple of times where ATN is in the background here. And then, of course, Shiv's town hall, which earlier Carolina and Hugo are discussing the "We Get It" slogan, questions staff members wanted to ask at the town hall.
We get it. General tenor is, what the hell's happening? I'm embarrassed to say to my mother I work at Waystar. Any advice? Please tell us anything at all about what is happening here.
And, of course, the explosive performance from both Shiv and Kendall. We get an interesting quote from Michelle Ann about the general climate of Logan's reputation.
You know, when this thing broke, the whole thing was Logan Roy's going down. Then you got this thing, some of our folks are like, there's no way Roy's going down. The president's going to protect him. The system is broken. Maybe the president has not been feeling like your coverage has been very helpful or truthful lately.
Here, Connor references previous ponytail on PGN.
You know, PGN pulls up that photo of me with a ponytail anytime they want to make me look untrustworthy.
Shiv sends her very scathing open letter out, which is then read on the Awobi show.
I am deeply concerned for the well-being of my brother, but the events of the last days have made it clear that our hopes for his recovery were misplaced. I've now been a direct witness to his misogynistic rants, and I would ask that people give my brother privacy and consideration during this difficult time.
We close this episode up, and the only thing in the next episode are clips from news about the FBI raid at Waystar.
This is a show of resolve, and there are cameras outside, and they do not need to see the FBI meeting any resistance.
In Retired Janitors of Idaho, we get a lot of stuff with paparazzi outside, PGN outside, protesters outside. There's more news with another kind of Bill O'Reilly guy. I'm not sure how much of the shareholder meet itself is actually public, but of course this episode we get Frank talking nonstop, Carl running on and off, Jerry having a stall, Roman fails at his talk with the president.
Yeah, he just wanted to let us know that he's not going to run again. He's pulling out. His minor neurological issue, which, you know, the media, starting with us, have blown way out of proportion.
Kendall comes on stage to badmouth his dad and talk about his foundation. And later he talks about that with his PR team.
Response is like kind of positive, actually.
It was good that you mentioned the foundation.
Someone called it a sermon on the Marriott.
So now at the end of the Cruises train, I think it's a good time to take a step back and look at the Cruises scandal as a whole, as well as Ken's response to it. The 60 Minutes segment is really particularly damning. It's the first time we see the Roy family or the Waystar company themselves have to like sit down and ingest these injustices. When it comes to, you know, the term "no real person involved" holds a lot of importance in Kendall's arc to, you know, understanding how the cover-up of his killing of the waiter is so related to everything that's gone on here. Logan saying NRPI about Andrew Dodds to him at the end of season 2 kind of causes a switch in his brain. I just think "no real person involved" is the most damning phrase in the entirety of the show, and that is the commoner. You know, even throughout this video, the Roys still fundamentally look like dumb and funny assholes more than anything. But the Cruises scandal goes to show how legitimately insidious Waystar and the Roy family is. They are literal life-ruining pariahs, and especially after this scandal, are the symbol of injustice for so many people. Any sex worker, any dancer, any migrant worker, their families, anyone involved in these crimes and cover-ups. It's just so damning, so widespread, and it all comes back to them. Which is why it's so disheartening how Kendall's kind of white knight arc ends. I know for the way that I work as a human being, seeing that speech he gives at the end of season 2, I would have been on his side immediately. We need a guy like this. We need a rich white man to use his platform against his family with his own personal knowledge. This is going to be the thing that makes the change. This is it. And I would be so upset that he couldn't deliver more. And, you know, again, less about him as a person and more about the fact that his involvement in the cruises scandal ends up putting so much of the shine on him in a way that it becomes a family struggle again. It becomes a fight between a father and son and not a fight between the general population employed by Waystar and the people that use that to their advantage. And just in general, I haven't really mentioned it yet, but I think it's interesting to think about hearsay, think about blind items, things that are off the record. What would Fakret say? What would any driver say? Colin anonymously telling people things he signed an NDA about. Obviously, there had been whispers about this for a while. I guarantee if I was in this world, I would have already tracked down some, 18-part TikTok series about Lester McClintock, finding old articles and interviews and dancers to see if they have any stories, which is something that I think you could discuss when it comes to anything related to the Roys. What would the servant on the yacht who was supposed to have a threesome with them say when that doesn't happen? What secrets does Willa share with her friends that get out? It's just interesting in general. Although we do get such an incredible amount of this public-facing media of the Roy family, think about how much that we have and haven't seen that's still a part of the conversation, in the same way we hear blind items about Jeff Bezos or Elon or Zuckerberg or whatever. In the next episode, we hear about how Roman signed off on Dr. Honk, the man who could talk to cars. We get a number of things surrounding ATN at the presidential candidate meeting.
You've heard they're calling this the ATN primary.
Greg and Greenpeace. And then a number of things around Mencken, talking about his perception of ATN and their sort of elderly target audience.
A pudding cup at 5 p.m. in the nursing home. Bedtime stories to maximize shareholder value. Doesn't speak to the people that I talk to. Logan Roy was an icon, but, he's no longer relevant.
Shiv mentions how violent his staff is.
His chief of staff broke a kid's jaw at a rally.
And we get the notorious photo of Mencken and the family. There isn't a whole lot in the rest of season 3. Paparazzi watches Kendall and his guests go into his party. Connor and Willa talk about a piece he's getting written about his campaign.
The guy from Politico asking regarding his piece.
In a conversation with Kendall about PR opportunities, Comfrey mentions a podcast that's a deep dive about the Roys, which includes The Waiter.
Ex-Globe journalists who are doing sort of kind of like the Kennedys, Curse of the Roys deep dive. They're doing Connor's mom and your dad and someone named Rose, and then the tabloid suicides. There's a kid who was bullied, and was it an accident or did he kill himself? He was the caterer at your sister's wedding, I guess.
We get all this stuff with Mattson and his tweets.
Emojis, controller, fingers crossed, eggplant.
So Gojo's price is moving up and fucking up.
Yeah, I think he played you, Rome.
Tom is potentially having a Forbes piece written on him about ATN citizens.
The silly Forbes profile piece. I'm turning ATN citizens into a cash machine and they want to know how I did it.
And I still need someone to explain to me whatever the fuck the Israeli AI operation is. Now we're into the final season. There isn't a whole lot in the first couple episodes. Logan watches the news on his birthday. Like I said about Kendall at Vaulter, I'm not always sure what meetings with, more average members of staff are public and what aren't, but I kind of feel like even if there wasn't recorded footage of Logan's "We're Pirates" speech, the word about that certainly got around. But of course, the next episode is Connor's wedding. Connor and Willa's mom discuss the young people here at the wedding.
Look at all the young people.
I heard a few of them moaning about the rich.
Well, they don't mind the taste of your champagne.
After Logan dies, Carolina very quickly hears a rumor of a reporter talking about Logan's health.
I just got a call from a reporter who's already heard a rumor about Logan's health.
Paparazzi is all around getting ready to photograph the siblings and Logan's body as he comes into Teterboro. And the siblings have a really quick press conference. Shiv gives a statement, and she announces that they want to be a part of the company moving forward.
We intend to shepherd it through whatever its future may be, but we'll be there. We intend to be there.
We get a really nice quote from Kendall here about the sort of responsibility that they have in their private lives because of their importance as figures in this company.
Every single thing we say and do today is going in the memoirs, going in the fucking congressional record, it's coming up at board meetings, it's going in SEC filings.
Really all we get the next episode is all of Logan's obituaries.
A complicated man, sharp reader of the national mood, business genius. Well, then he was very much a man of his era.
And of course, Kendall and Roman are publicly voted through as the interim CEOs. These last couple episodes have a whole lot of public presence in them. There's the Logan memorial poster at the Waystar building, but now we start to hear about the Callispatron franchise and how bad things are going. And obviously some of that seems like privileged information, but some of it does not.
We're okaying Callispatron reshoots, panicky vibes.
We hear about the reputation of Gojo.
Their deputy of comms is a ski jumper. NASDAQ master race. They're just a bunch of really impressive, very serious young people.
Did you see what happened when they acquired the video game publisher? Tension. They went through the place like fire ants.
Incredibly meritocratic.
Insular, weird, brutal motherfuckers.
The reputation of Ken and Roman in relation to this sale.
Price stabilized. Markets seem to like us.
Yeah, the markets like that you're selling to Mattson.
Mm-hmm.
Shiv discusses a variety of negative articles.
I'm just struck by the number of pieces that knife Dad and imply that his children, particularly his younger sons, have been covering for him for quite some time. Nasty little piece about out here, no one getting along, bad vibes.
A weird anecdote from Greg about Mattson that's very similar to a blind item about Leonardo DiCaprio.
When he's fucking randos, he does noise-canceling headphones.
Right.
Podcasts.
And of course, the Callispatron screening. In Living Plus, Joy talks about her fear at ATN's politics.
The rightward lean from ATN. Lots of people are concerned about democratic institutions.
At the shareholder meeting, we see some posters from Waystar Studios outside, as well as a Dodderick and Friends poster inside. One of the ATN news anchors introduces Kendall for his Living Plus presentation, which obviously starts bad, but ends up getting good by the end.
Big shoes. Big shoes.
I'm convinced that the Living Plus real estate brand can bring the cruise ship experience to dry land and double the earnings of our parks division.
Would I take an extra year right now with my dad? Say the unsaid. That would be priceless.
And Mattson tweets again, the whole fucking Doderick mocked Fry thing. We get Kendall's response.
Well, I'm not gonna fave it.
And hear about the positive response from the public.
Buy side, good vibes to sell.
Okay.
Bloomberg has
Zoom,
positive
zoom.
snaps coming. Seeing some movement.
Really good.
People are liking it.
Wow, they're liking it.
Then in our election episodes, things start off with a conversation between Rava and Kendall about Sophie.
But there was a comment. All right, the guy had on a Ravenhood shirt. There was a quote on the shirt, and she felt it was racially tinged, and she's been upset. And now at school, some kids have started this whole anti-ATN thing, which is actually very supportive, but it's complex for her.
Also before the tailgate party, we see Greg successfully fire a large group of people. We start hearing about either potential acts of protest or domestic terrorism, the beginning of these Macon gangs in the streets that they'll kind of blame on Antifa.
Yeah, Victory Vans, those O'Malley fucks, I think fuck him.
So ATN is saying Dems positive polls, a radical misinformation plot.
The Phoenix thing, the O'Malleys firebombed a fucking campaign office.
Everyone is quite freaked out about this political firebombing in Arizona.
Oh yeah, the pop-pops in Phoenix, the waste paper basket on fire. I think a file cabinet was in the ICU.
And we also hear from Willa, one of the people that's still the most, connected to the commoner world, talk about her loved one's perception of Macon.
You know, all my family and friends hate Mencken.
On election night, we obviously get an insane amount of ATN clips, Ravenhead.
Shut up!
Calling different states' projections.
Daniel Jimenez has won the state of Michigan.
Jared Mencken will win Arizona.
Jared Mencken has won the state of Wisconsin.
And, see how things build with these fires and attacks.
We have a news van in a bit of trouble in Oregon. Things looking fighty in Milwaukee. Fair bit of intimidation, his folks and ours. So like fire in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, could be nasty. Could be electrical failure, might be Menckenists. Camera smashed, crew harassed in Portland.
Connor gives a fascinating speech when he concedes in Mencken's direction.
I happen to be a billionaire. Sorry. But honestly, America, you flunked it. I guess you're gonna have to find some other poor mook's paps to suckle on. I say, conheads, I salute you. And America, be afraid. Be warned, for the conheads are coming.
ATN calls Mencken for everything and is there to cover him supposedly winning the election.
Mencken will be the next president of the United States. His candidacy starting in Virginia only 6 months ago. What started off as an unlikely impossibility, now a reality, it is Mencken.
I come begging for your vote. Welfare checkbook out, crowning the welfare kings and queens, till everyone's become a little tyrant.
So for our last digression here, I want to just talk a little bit more about the election and ATN's part in it. And, just judging from our personal experience in the last decade with organizations like Fox News, with people like Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro, I think we all know how much media affects the way we think about the world, but it really is terrifying to think about how easily so much of our population has been incited and radicalized by things they can find on the daily news. And we've gotten to see this build in a very interesting way on Succession with the introduction of characters like Ravenhead and just in general seeing the way that Roman is radicalized from season to season, how the jokes he makes get worse, how the ways he treats Shiv get worse. And in general, we've heard a lot of comments from people about how ATN's demographic is so old, and thus Ravenhead and Mencken are figures that connect more with a younger audience. And we literally see how they are able to work together with that audience to hijack the election before, during, and after and run rampant in the streets. I mean, it's like, remind you of anything? Despite cruises, despite anything that we know about Waystar at the time, there's still a population of the common man who trusts ATN enough to get them into this position. But there's also a population of the common man against ATN, like hearing about the anti-ATN group at school. That's a much larger topic I'd like to discuss at some point. Kendall's children, especially the complexities of being someone like Sophie Roy. So if you have an interest in that, please let me know in the comments. But the entirety of the country is not being brainwashed by the Roys, and there are people fighting back everywhere. I think it's also important to reference the fact that we still don't exactly know how the election turned out. The way I've always thought of it is that Jimenez would have won. The ballots that were destroyed by quote-unquote Menckenists. But with such a traditionally conservative president like the Raisin in office before Mencken, I don't see a world where a legitimate recount is held or any efforts are made to afford Jimenez the presidency that he most likely won. And just an incredibly quick note while I'm editing. If ATN wasn't pushing all of this coverage on the president's possible Alzheimer's, he would have been the conservative candidate running for re-election, and Mencken never would have been a part of the race in the first place. It's just insane how many explicit decisions by the family are the reason that this election turned out the way it did. During Logan's funeral episode, we hear a lot about these riots. We see them on the news. Jess is worried about them. There's just a perfect New York Times article that Tom is reading to Greg about ATN's participation in the election, and we see a couple of different vignettes of protesters attacking people, which of course ends with Roman and the riots. And now we're all ready to our finale. Immediately as the episode starts, we hear a little radio thing about the deal.
In terms of M&A action, we're hearing that Gojo and Waystar could seal their long-gestated deal as soon as tomorrow. Word is that regulatory concerns have receded, so Lucas Matson may soon take control of the deceased Logan Roy's empire.
We get another one of my favorite props of all time, the New Yorker magazine article with Matson and Shiv. Behind Kendall at some point at the Waystar building, there's a news headline that says, Jimenez says Mencken has no right to say he's president. We hear about the fact that Connor is going to go to Slovenia for Mencken, and then we get to the end, which means we can assume that someone leaked the details about the fight that the siblings have at the end. People obviously saw and heard what they were doing that day. And the last bit of, public information we get in the show is the photo op and official Gojo sale announcement.
Jesus and his disciples.
I guarantee I missed something here and there, but I think this gives you a general view of all of the public material we get around most of the figures in succession. And while I shared the majority of my thoughts on this throughout the digressions, I found it really particularly interesting how I felt emotionally during this rewatch. I've never been this sad, this angry. I've never had such a chip on my shoulder or felt like it was a task to get through episodes as much as I did when really trying to watch it from the perspective of an average person, trying to really kind of one-to-one them with their real-world counterparts. And when this isn't a show about family, trauma, acceptance, and disappointment, it's a show about truly disgusting ways we use power, how we use power to hide and mask things, how we use power to bring attention to the wrong things or bring attention to the right things in the wrong ways. Fundamentally, how these slick and smarmy attitudes of these few people reflect back onto the real, earned, lived lives of the common public, that millions of dollars will go away on a whim due to Logan's mood, that the entirety of Cruz's investigation is brought down by Kendall's hubris, that a young man that he killed was used as a figurehead in a business deal against his father, that one person's edgelord preference of presidential candidate will cost the entire country 4 years of safety and sanctity. And I think just from this perspective, it really goes to show how despicable it is for anyone to have this level of power or influence anywhere. The last thing I really want to touch on is just nothing I discussed here would be nearly as emotionally relevant if it weren't for the incredible crew of Succession, the prop designers, art direction teams, graphic design, even makeup, hair, costumes of, the ATN news anchors, the motion graphics of ATN shows. Everything in this world is so legitimized and so grounded by the overwhelming accuracy of these props, and that's just fucking awesome. Alright, so that's all I have for you guys today. I'm gonna be so interested to see what the comments are like. How would you feel if you were a commoner in the world of Succession? Would you become a Kendall stan? Would you be the one person that gave Willa's play a good review? Let me know. And on the topic of future Succession videos, I had a number of comments in my last Succession video ask me to do a video about the Succession spouses, all of the girlfriends and wives, the things I like about their characters, some of the ways I think their characters weren't utilized enough. So let me know if you're interested in that, as well as a video on Kendall's kids, what it would be like to be someone like Sophie Roy. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. If you'd like to see those other Succession videos sometime soon, turn the bell on so you can get a notification every time I post. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.